After competition, I started doing film work, and I put together about, I guess I worked at 8 or 9 of them, and I went from actor to producer, worked with Keith Vitali, who took me under his wings, and the great thing about Keith Vitali is he's done 9 movies already, or 10 movies already, so he not only showed me the ropes, but he taught me how to become an associate producer, a co-producer. We started producing films together, became best friends. We worked with NG out of Hong Kong with seasonal films. We did 3 films with him. 1, 2! I also started producing kids' videos, writing books for kids. One video I did was called Self-Defense for Kids, and I talked about how to defend yourself, self-defense, without hurting the other child. Look at that. He put his foot down and he could like take a nap before some of you did it. So most of the time a child is picked on in life, he's picked on by, or she's picked on by somebody they know, not a stranger. So what I did was I came up with alternatives, and it was real simple maneuvers. Somebody grabs you, you reach around, you grab them, you hold them down. And I had like 4 or 5 moves like that. Right side forward to them. The great thing about it is it's funny how everything always goes back to Jackie Chan. Keith has done all of these wonderful things, and he's done a Jackie Chan film. So it's been a feather in my cap. 1, 2. I got into the martial arts in 1971. A college roommate of mine, a friend of mine, John Bellinger, was a green belt in karate. So he took me to the first karate class. I saw a little guy defending himself against a taller guy while they were sparring. And I just had never seen karate before, and I was captivated by it. My strategy in becoming the #1 is that I had a goal to be #1. And at first you don't think in terms of that, you just want to get better. And then I started doing things along with friends. And it's not just me. I had a great friend named Mike Geneva who was just really sharp and smart fighter. And we would start analyzing techniques. And one of the things that kind of revolutionized the way we fought compared to the rest of the country was, and now get this, you have 4 movements in your sidekick. You're in your stance, you pick it up and chamber it, and after you chamber it, you throw it out, and then you bring it back in. That's 4 movements. All karate schools in the world, regardless of styles, teach this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. We didn't like #1. We did not like chambering the legs, because when the punch would come at us, it's the same time we would chamber a sidekick. So as the punch was coming, our leg is chambered and we were hit. So we decided together, and we said, we're going to take out #1. We're going straight to #2. So what we did was we forgot about the chamber, getting the knee up real high, and we picked the heel in a direct line between us and their opponent. And that was so different because now we stopped our opponents from attacking us by putting our foot right in their line. And right in the line, as they would come and attack us, they'd get hit. My instructor, he was pretty tough Korean, tough instructor. He would count how many people I broke their ribs. Well, I was a white belt during that year and 1 month. And I had 52 notches, he called them. I had broken 52 people's ribs with my sidekicks. So you can see that I was obsessed by the sidekicks, I trained by the sidekicks, but being somebody that's slender, and especially with the gear, I had to develop a technique that could stop that larger person from just, controlling me. It was extremely beneficial that I came at the era that I got to see Bruce Lee, I got to train with Jackie Chan, I got to train with Bill Wallace, Joe Louis, Jeff Smith. I really idolized Chuck Norris, because Chuck Norris to me was, after all these people I described, Chuck Norris was my man. Chuck was a just terrific fighter, had terrific timing and technique. Even though I've trained with the best in the world, I really used Chuck Norris as my role model. It's because of his strategy, his timing, his movement. Chuck could spin off a round kick, he moved, he was smart, he used strategy. And I consider myself very much like that. Not the fastest, the strongest, the best by any means, but I wanted to have a strategy. I always told myself I could win. I always believed I could win. And every time I didn't win, I was always let down because I couldn't believe somebody could beat me, even though I know there's great talent out there. But I had to convince my mind that I was the #1 fighter, and I had to believe in myself like that. And so just having Chuck Norris as a great role model was phenomenal. Never had a chance to even tell him. We're good friends, but Chuck had a great impact on me. A good friend of mine called named Pat Johnson. And Pat Johnson is a fight choreographer out of Los Angeles. He's done some major work. And he called me up and asked me if I'd be interested in working with Jackie Chan. I went, well, of course I would. I'd love to. Can you be ready by Friday? And it was like Wednesday. I said, be ready to do what? He goes, you have to fly to Barcelona, Spain, and we're leaving Friday. Do you have a passport? And I went, yes, I have a passport. I'm ready to go. And 2 days later, I was on a plane, and he told me that Benny Urquidez would be meeting me out there. We met at the airport, flew together, and it was through Pat Johnson I got that role. And it was kind of nice because Benny was the #1 fighter in the world, full contact. I was rated #5 in the world, full contact, and so happened to be in Benny's division. And so for 2 years, 3 years, I was doing point fighting, tournament fighting, as well as full contact fighting. And I knew I'd have to cross, swords with Benny Urquidez in the ring one day. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to work out with him a little bit and see really how tough he is. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he's tough. So it was wonderful. We spent 3 or 4 months together in Barcelona. We got to train together, live together. So it was a wonderful experience. Of course, we had heard about Jackie Chan through his other movies. He had done just phenomenal. We still at that time consider him the very best in the world. You know, you have your other major stars, but still Jackie Chan was the premier. And here it is 20 years later, he's still, 25 years later, whatever, he's still the man. I couldn't tell you who's the most talented because every day I changed my mind. I thought Yong Bao was the most talented on certain days, and then I knew Sammo Hung was the most talented, then Jackie Chan. No, guess what? All three were just phenomenal. All three were at a different level than I was used to seeing in the United States, and especially in film. And so I was basically overwhelmed. My senses were overwhelmed to watch them right in front of me do techniques and acrobatics and choreograph moves that looked better than the movies that had special effects and that used wiring. They were just doing it without anything right in front of us. Sammo was he was so talented to work with, and he was giving. It was good because he would help put the fight sequence together with Jackie, and it was extraordinary because each of the three gave me hints and worked with me. What Jackie worked with me the most, believe it or not, was my facial expressions. Sam, on the other hand, he worked with my fluidity, my power. He loved my sidekick. Yong Bao, the thing that he liked was the long kicks that I had, the circular kicks, the angular kicks. And he'd always would tell me, oh, I like your kicks, I like your kicks. And it was nice. I had 3 guys working and they had mutual respect. Out of the 3 brothers, what was interesting to me, and especially in hindsight, was Jackie Chan, Yong Bu, and Sammo Hung. There was this hierarchy. It was almost like a status. Yong Bu was at the bottom of the hierarchy. He had to call them big brother and do whatever both of them said. The same was true for Jackie Chan. Jackie was above Yong Bu, but he had to listen to Sammo Hung and never talk back and never be disrespectful. And I'd always ask them, what's going on? And they told about their school they went together and how they lived together, and that the older ones, you had to show respect. And so it was usually the quiet person was Yong Bu, and he was always there, and he really respected the other 2, and he would sit with me, and we talked about the other 2. But he could never question anything, like he couldn't question fight choreography. He couldn't question dialogue. He just had to say yes, sir, and just do what he was told him, because these were his big brothers. I talked to Jackie Chan about the same thing. He said, oh, no, Sammo's my big brother. I have to do what the big brother says. And he said, oh, I was so upset when I was in the camp when we were growing up, and Sammo was the head. My professor left as he left the room, and all of us are young kids, and we're there. Sammo Hung came to me, and he had me stand in a stance, and he put the professors, or his teachers, what he called the teachers, teacup on my knee, and made me stand there until it hurt. And then I dropped, of course, I went down, and the teacup broke. And the professor came in, and my teacher came in, got really upset at me because of Sammo. I mean, they were still talking about when they were kids 20 years earlier, you know. It was incredible. But they had that kind of history. And Yong Bao was technically perfect. Every move, every technique was just technically, you know, from a form standpoint, was perfect. He flowed, and he had such an incredible acrobatic background. So you know, it was just a pleasure to work with him. We got along real well. When I first got to the set in Barcelona, there was like electricity in the air, because it was, all of us knew we were making history. Benny and I knew we were making history by being in a film with Sammo and Jackie and Yong Bu. But I think it was history being made from Jackie Chan's perspective, because this was a higher budget film. This was a film taking him out of Hong Kong, and now he was working on location. And everybody was excited because this was one of his first major steps to stardom that he really wanted to reach. And so everybody was very positive. There's no bickering. Of course, Sammo's the king with Jackie. Whatever they say goes. And we were bystanders. It was like we were participants in history, and we loved every minute of it. I got to develop a good relationship with Jackie because he was very interested in coming to the United States eventually. He wanted to work on his English. So he would talk to me a good bit. We spent a lot of time together. And we would always just talk about, anything from martial arts to politics, you name it. And the hope was that, of course, that Jackie would improve his English. It probably had a 3-month shooting schedule. They shoot differently than we do here in the States. And we didn't have a script. And we wouldn't even know when Benny and I would have to shoot. They would just say, you'll be shooting this week, or maybe next week, or be on standby, like that. And so Benny and I started working out together. And we decided to start traveling. We went to France and Germany, we went to different places. But we started going into other karate schools. We would walk in unannounced into other karate schools and then make challenges, not death challenges or anything, but we like to work out with some of the black belts there. I never forget this. Benny always told me this: I'll take the toughest one. Don't worry about it. Not that I was worried, but he loved that. Benny says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'll fight the instructor. Whoever's the toughest one, I'll take. You take the rest. I think Benny and I never probably got hit the whole time, regardless of where we went. But Benny almost seemed to knock his man out every time. It was like, I still had some protocol. I would still take care of the fighter I'm working out with. But Benny, he would just left hook or some kind of kick, and the guy'd go down. Benny was so tough. I think this single moment working with Jackie had the greatest impact on me in martial arts choreography, because I have also put together other films and worked as the fight choreographer. We were getting ready to fight, and we were at the courtyard where the bulldozers were. And I had not worked out or thrown kicks with Jackie yet, or Samo. They haven't even seen my talent. Now they knew who I was, and they knew Benny, but they hadn't really seen me do anything yet. And they hadn't at that time started choreographing the fight sequence. I see Samo over there, I see the crew getting ready, everything looks final. We're getting ready to shoot. Shoot what? I mean, we haven't done anything yet. We haven't gone through the choreography. Jackie turns, looks at me, and says, throw some kicks. I threw some kicks, jumps, spins, rounds, side kicks, and I'm an aerial kicker, so it looked pretty good. And he goes, good. And he sat like this, and I'll never forget it. Took his hands, and as he looked at me kicking, he started doing this. He started tapping on his legs. Ba-da-da, bump, 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 whatever the beat would be. And then he goes, no. And he goes, boom, 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 like that. I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm working on the beat of the fight. I said, what do you mean the beat of the fight? He goes, Keith, imagine 2 of the best fighters in the world are fighting each other on film. If there's not a rhythm, if there's not a beat, he says, you'll be watching that film, but your subconscious will be going, something's wrong here. And you won't like it, even though they're the 2 best fighters in the world. It'll be unsettling. You just won't feel comfortable. He says, so what I do first is musical, it's a rhythm. I work on the beat, pop, 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 pop. And then I add the techniques to the beat. And I went, oh my goodness, that's revolutionary. On the West, we've never heard of anything like that. We know, take your arm back and you hit somebody. Somebody comes in, you kick them and they drop. But actually, hearing somebody that choreographs films talk about the beat of the film and the choreography of the film, I mean, I literally want to get a pen and go, thank you, master, and write it down. Our first fight scene, really, actually, with Benny and I fighting the 3 good guys, was when we were fighting them at the night scene. It was a street scene. And we were in pursuit. And it's the first time you see our characters on film. The thing that I enjoy the most is Benny and I are walking down the street, and they're the 3 guys with 3 brothers, Yongbyu, Jackie Chan, and Sammo Hung. And they're standing there, and they're in a karate stance and look really good. And then they look at us. And then when I saw the film, what I loved so much, and this is after the fact, was the music they put over it. It was the coolest music I ever heard. I mean, it enhanced the scene. We're like so cool where the bad guys walk in to fight them. The thing that sticks out in my mind is not only how wonderful they were, how gifted they were, but they took so much pride and precision on just the maneuvers after the fight scene. After we do, right before they fight us, I mean, what they worked on and rehearsed the most, which was incredible, was they all high-five each other, and they do some little move where they go like this. But they had to choreograph that, and they spent as much time on that, doing this and how they presented themselves on their high-fives and their little moves with their hands. And I was like going, this is incredible, how much effort and timing, because everything was timing. And then when we exploded, I fought Jackie, and then Benny went off fighting Samo. And I was so cautious not to hit him too hard with my techniques. And one of the techniques they had me do was a spinning back fist, which is a dangerous technique. And you better have good timing, and you better have a good sense of direction, because you know, when you spin and your arms out like that, you can really hurt somebody. But it came off without a hitch. Something that Benny and I really enjoyed after the fact, after we saw the movie, was, and it's so funny to us because from an ego standpoint, here we are just fighting the good guys, and we beat them up. They look at each other and they go, they're too tough, let's run. And we're thinking we're fighting the two toughest guys or three toughest guys in the world probably. I mean, just phenomenal fighters. And they're on film, they're actually saying to Benny and I, oh, they're too tough. And so it was really fun just to have that on film. And now we got to the point to where Jackie's in a terrific fight with Benny Urquidez. My job is right in the middle of this encounter. Jackie Chan is going to do a jump spinning kick and go over Benny Urquidez's head. Sammo Hung wanted me to time my sliding side kick and have my side kick hit Jackie Chan in the chest and knock him down. I looked at it, I kind of rehearsed a little bit, and I said, I can do it, let's go. So I got right side forward, my trusty right side kick, and as we're getting ready to say action, Sammo looks at me and says, what are you doing? And I went, well, I'm ready. He goes, change sides. I said, what do you mean change sides? No, I want to kick my right side like an idiot, with somebody who had no experience. He smiled and he said, Keith, the camera's over here. We want to see your face. Or, you know, we can't move our whole production and close down our set because you want to use your right leg. I changed sides and I went, but you don't understand. My left leg's not as good as my right leg. I don't think you want me kicking anybody with my left leg. I just can't control it as much. So I did it anyway. I timed it perfectly and I hit Jackie over and over, 7, 8 takes. I'd hit him with my heel, I hit him too hard, I hit him in the chest, I'd knock him down. I always felt bad about it, that I didn't, you know, have the control that my right leg would have had. In the course of this fight sequence, I would hit him with my sliding kicks and I would drop him, and each time he'd get back up, we did the take over and over. My last take, I was tired, it's like the 9th or 10th time, and I slid up, and as he was jumping over Benny Urquidez, Jackie was landing, and at the same time he was landing, I caught him with my left foot, my side kick, I caught him right in the throat. As I caught him in the throat, I could tell my foot went inside and maybe crushed his windpipe. I didn't know what happened. But as soon as I hit him, I knew automatically there was danger. He fell to the ground, and I broke out of character. And you're supposed to stay in character from an actor's perspective until you hear the director say, cut. Then run and help him if you want to help him. But immediately, as soon as I hit him, I stopped and I was panicked because I thought I killed him. And I went, oh, like this. And then I remember everybody was yelling at me. It wasn't so much that I hurt Jackie. They cared about that, believe me. But I've been hurting them for the last hour. No, it was that I broke character, that I didn't wait for those words cut. And now I tell that story, relate that story all the time to aspiring stuntmen. After I had done this scene with Jackie Chan, and I had kicked him so many times with my sidekick and dropped him so many times, and I always felt so bad. Personally, I thought I was fired and they were going to send me back to America anytime. But what happened was Sammo fell in love with my sidekick. He loved my power. He'd always tell me, oh, more power, I like your sidekick. So a week later, we come back to the set and he devised a new scene just for me. He brought in a Volkswagen bus and had the good guy come out of the bus. I'd pick him up and I'd throw him out of the bus, and then had another good guy come. As the guy would step out of the bus, my job was to kick him back into the inside of the Volkswagen. He wanted to see if I could pick up the character I was going to kick, throw him inside the bus, and hit the bus so hard with his body that the bus would actually shake, just like that. And so I went, oh my gosh. So I went, sure, let's try it. So I remember I did the scene. I remember I slid up and I hit this guy as hard as I could probably hit anyone. And as I started to walk away, and Samuel goes, "Where are you going?" And I went, "Well, the scene has to be over." He goes, "No, we have more Chinese, more Chinese." I looked over there, and there was a line of other stuntmen in a straight line ready to go back to back and have me do the scene over and over till they got a good take. Maybe it was a month later, I'm doing one of my scenes with Sammo Hung and Yong Biao, and now we're fighting. And in this scene, I'm fighting against both of them. And Sammo has like a spear in his hand. It's a staff with this protruding thing from it. And he's spinning it behind his back and over his head, and I'm ducking and jumping, and I got to fight two guys at one time. And it's not easy because the choreography is phenomenally fast. And so we did the scene 30, 40, I've heard some accounts 45 times to 50 times. But I just know I changed outfits twice. And it was phenomenal, it was fun. But one of the scenes, during the scene, I had to do a jumping spinning kick and break the staff in half that Sammo was holding. And then once he breaks it, he looks like this, and then he runs away. Then I continue my fight with Yong Biao. So one of the takes, I must have been tired or whatever, my timing was off, but I did my jump spinning kick. And remember, when you do a film, it's not like fighting. When I'm fighting in a ring, I can pause and take a break by doing my side kick and circle and run, or hit somebody with a side kick. You actually have more time to regroup in an actual fight sequence than you do in a real martial arts movie. When you're doing a movie, you have to give 100% effort and 100% with your technique at all times. There's no time you can just, well, for 30 minutes or 30 seconds in a round, I'm just going to move around. You don't have that luxury. So one of the takes, I jumped up. Instead of breaking the staff, I caught Sammo Hung right here with a jump spinning heel kick, caught him in the head. He just goes out, he hits the ground, and he's down. But I did learn my lesson because I stayed in character, and I didn't move. No one moved. The problem was Sammo Hung is the director. He only is the one who can say cut. So it maybe was 2 minutes to 5 minutes. It could have been an eternity. But I just remember I stood there and I wasn't moving because I had so many people yelling at me earlier about moving. And I stayed there. And I remember when Sammo jumped up and he looked at me and just hugged me. I would imagine he was going to punch me or hit me, but he loved it. He loved my power. He hugged me and he started yelling in Chinese at his crew. I can only imagine he was telling them that this is my red badge of courage. This, in other words, means I'm taking it. I'm the director. If I can take it, you guys should be able to take it as well. Or he could have been saying, Keith's an idiot. I don't know what he was saying, but he did it with a smile on his face. And he just had even more respect for me. And that one, of course, didn't get into the film. But it was just phenomenal having to work with both of them. But I learned that lesson, and it held true for all the rest of my films. And again, when I'm teaching at acting academies, I tell my guys, I don't care what happens, never break. Later on, Sammo comes to me and he says, "We have a surprise for you." And I said, "What's that?" I said, "By the way, how are you going to kill me off? I have no clue. How are you going to, do you guys shoot me, beat me up, throw me out a window? What are you guys going to do?" He says, "We have something very special for you." And I said, "What's that?" He says, "Don't worry, it's something very special." So now when that scene came in, the final portion of this scene, they brought in this tray and they had these ceramic vases, like you would pour champagne out of or wine out of. And in it, they had champagne or wine. I just knew it had to be most likely champagne because when it hit my eyes, it just burned. But anyway, so I looked at it, and Sammo says, at the end of the scene, you're going to land in this chair, and as you come up, Yong Biao is going to take this wine glass and throw wine in your face. Then he's going to take the ceramic vase, and he's going to hit you over the head with it. And it has liquid in it. And I went like this, and I kind of popped it a few times, and I went, "Sammo, usually I don't complain, but that's kind of hard." And he smiled, "No problem, no problem." And I went, "Oh, big problems, big problems." I said, "Can I see a knife?" And one of the crew brought me a knife, and I was actually trying to dig some of the ceramic out of the inside to make it thinner. And I said, "Forget it." He goes, "One take." And he actually called me K-Fu, one take K-Fu. And he said, "Or you'll have to do all the remaining vases." And I said, "What's this?" And the entire crew then came into the set. And it was like payback time for Keith Vitali is what it was. Well, Sammo Hung gave me these instructions. Do your choreography, don't change it, but try to catch and hit Yong Biao. You can't hit him. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm going to catch him. So we start the choreography, and it's just lightning fast, spinning, jumping, kicking, punching. And in the middle of it, I'm amazed in my head how talented this guy is, because I can't catch him. And I'm doing a round kick, and he'll just flip over my round kick. I'll do another technique, he'll flip over that. And I'm really trying to get him. And as he's doing it, he's like, almost has like a little smile, a cute smile, because he knows I can't get him. And I have so much respect for him. So I do a flying kick, and I land in my chair. He does a flying kick and lands in his chair. Now there's a table between us. On cue, I get up, he grabs that wine, he throws it in my face, and the only thing I can remember is, it hurts. It's burning my eyes. As soon as I did this, I went, uh-oh, that's not a good sign. I went, uh-oh. And as soon as I did this, wham! A vase hits my head, I stagger, and as I'm staggering, I'm looking not only at him, but the entire place smiling. And I'm in my mind, I smile. If you look at the film closely, I smile because in my mind I'm thinking, I am the dumbest person alive to allow them to hit me over the head with a vase and knock me out, and then I go unconscious. And I actually went unconscious. I got up, and the entire crew is clapping. And that's their payback for me. I've heard everybody, smacked everybody, not on purpose, but they were so gracious and so nice. And Samuel hugged me, and Jackie's laughing. They're laughing. It was hilarious. But they literally just knocked me out with that vase to my head. And so now when I watch it, I'll slow motion just my smile. It's such a pleasure doing this film. We felt like we were making history while we were doing it, and part of history. Just Jackie Chan's legacy. And after the fact, and when the film came out, I think I had even more respect with my peers, and of course fans and people were so excited to talk to me about my working with Jackie and what he was like. I probably heard that 10,000 times. What's Jackie Chan really like? What's Sammo Hung really like? And each time I responded, they were awesome. They had great attitudes and extremely nice and respectful to Benny and I, and we really enjoyed working with them. And it was nice because I'd have the Chuck Norrises, Keith Haribashis, and people I respected, a lot of different film stars come to me going, hey, I saw your film. One of them was Wesley Snipes. Oh yeah, I saw Wheels and Mills, I loved it. Just different people like that really appreciated this particular film. I mean, they loved a lot of Jackie Chan's films. There was something magical about this one because, again, I think it was one that took its budget a little higher to put him on location, and it was really keynoted by Benny Urquidez's phenomenal fight with Jackie Chan. And I remember watching the training, and then I was watching the actual shooting of it, and I remember thinking at the time, watching Benny and Jackie as they were actually doing their techniques, that it looked better, just what you see there, than what I would see in movies back home. They had so much intensity. And there was a little tension on the set a couple of days between Benny and Jackie Chan because the way they shoot there is a little different. They make a little contact. They allow you to hit a little bit. And one of the things was in inserts and close-ups, they wanted to see Benny actually hit so they could spritz him. And by that I mean see the spray go off his forehead and his hair. And Jackie was really laying in to Benny Urquidez. And all he had was a little bitty gloves on like this, like, motorcycle gloves. Cut, Samuel, Benny, you okay? Okay? And Benny would do this every single time. No problem. And then, let's do it again. And then he'd do the little 4 or 5 moves, and Jackie would hit him a couple hard times with hooks in the head for the close-ups. Cut, Benny, okay? And Benny would go, no problem, and stare at Jackie Chan, stare at him. And then Jackie would do it again, pick up the intensity and hit him even harder and harder. Benny, okay, no problem, like that. And it caused a little bit of a rift like that, and that's when it's been written about before. It got a little heated, and the crew was there, and everybody's there, and Jackie said a couple things to Benny about maybe you and I should get in the ring and fight sometime, like that, joking that way. And Benny's going, you don't want me in the ring, basically like that. But it was not as big as it was blown up to be later, but they were heated at the time, and I think it was just couldn't believe that Benny can absorb this pain. It's like what I told you when had fought him earlier myself. I kicked him in the head while we were just working out. He didn't even feel it. I don't think he feels pain. But I know that later that night we were all out eating together and laughing about it. But it was kind of wonderful just being there and watching him. But just the choreography and how they put that fight sequence together, and then now all these years later is considered one of the best fight scenes of all time. We were getting ready to do the storming of the castle scene where we break into the castle. And we're sitting around at night and they're trying to think of a creative way to get inside that castle. So Jackie looks at me, and I don't know if this was planned or what, because it blew my mind. He goes, "Keith, how would you get in this castle?" And we're trying to think of a creative way of getting in it. And I looked up, and it's an old French castle. It's in northern Spain, but it was originally a French castle. It's over 1,000 years old, and I would imagine it's 40 feet, 50 feet high. And just a rotund type of wall structure going 40, 50 feet high. I looked up there and I went, "Jackie, there's no way really to get up there. You're going to have to go through the gate somehow." He looks, he goes, nah, I have a better way. And he took some sticks that he had, took a stick, and he jumped up and he put a stick in a hole in the castle. And he grabbed it with two hands, he spun around, held the stick, stood on the stick, put his hand out there, grabbed the stick, and went up the castle that way. And I remember thinking, he should be in the circus. Forget being a martial artist. That's the most impressive thing I think I've ever seen in my life. I had only done one film or two films prior, but just viewing films and being a fan of action films, everything was very slow. And the analogy I would use would be John Wayne-ish, where John Wayne, rears back a punch, shows you the punch, telegraphs the punch, and then throws it. And then the guy gets hit and he's waiting for the punch. Then he throws another punch. And this action is very slow, so to speak. Now I'm in an environment, I'm in a world where there's very repetitive techniques. There's a rhythm to it, there's a big beat to it, and there's so many techniques being thrown at you that it's like a chess match. You have to be thinking 4 or 5 moves ahead, because not only are you trying to keep up with their speed and maybe fight one person, sometimes you're fighting 2 people, and you have to know that you have to hit your mark each time, stay in your key light, and be able to block that weapon or duck when that weapon's coming. And you can't be going, now what was that 5th move or 6th move? Because then you could be hit with the technique. When I think back of the wonderful time I spent with Benny and of course the others, it was part of history. We realized it at the time. It was that I had so much respect for their talents, and I loved that they were gracious as producers and actors, and they shared their lives with me at the time. And I know when I came back to America, I think I had a smile on my face, probably stayed for a month, so I had just a wonderful experience.